Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall. We've been following this last few days. We've been following the ebb tide of Victober, a great BookTube event that's coming to an end for this year, where Katie at Books and Things and a whole bunch of other hosts encourage us all to read more Victorian literature and love it because it's so great. And I ordinarily, in the course of 2020, I have not been planning my Daily Penguins, but for this last week I've been looking specifically for Victorian literature, and I'm going to do the same thing for the bulk of November, because we're just handing off great BookTube events. We're moving from Victober to nonfiction November. There's plenty of nonfiction Penguin that we can go through, but today we're going to wrap up Victober, our little sprint of Victorian authors. Plenty more Victorian authors to go through. I don't know if we'll get to them all in 2020, but I want to wrap up my little nod to Victober with the person who it may just be pound for pound my favorite Victorian author, and that's Robert Louis Stevenson. And it's this little mass market paperback of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories. This has the beach at Falesa and also the ebb tide in it as well, but the main attraction here is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, his great story about a man who transforms himself. That is so much more than even the great Hollywood movies that have been made out of it. So much more. There's so much more going on in that story. And the more you know about Stevenson's life, the more Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde resonates, just completely resonates. There have been a number of great biographies of Robert Louis Stevenson. His own autobiographical writings are fantastic, but also I would recommend, of course, my guy, Frank McGlynn, who's a fantastic modern historian, a modern biographer, and who did a great biography of Stevenson. And more than that, I mean, of course, your recommendation, your Penguin recommendation section today is overwhelmingly positive. This author never wrote anything that I dislike. Never wrote anything that I don't actually love, and that I can't even say about Tennyson and Kipling. But Stevenson? Friends of his used to comment that he seemed blessed when it came to writing. That when he sat down to write something, when he sat down to write anything, he seemed blessed. It seemed like the perfect words came in the perfect cadence. And I would agree with that completely. I don't right now have a copy, I'm astonished to say, just amazed to say. He has a standard, rather often reprinted volume of his nonfiction, of his literary essays and book essays and stuff like that, the familiar essays that I don't have. I checked, and I don't know if Penguin makes a volume of it. I don't think they do, but plenty of other people have, and I don't have a copy of Robert Louis Stevenson's nonfiction, and that's terrible. That's a terrible, terrible shame. I should rectify that as soon as one crops up at the Brattle Bookshop. But also, I don't have copies of a lot of what this author wrote. For instance, I'm pretty sure that he has a large number, probably 8 or 9 volumes in Penguin Classic. I don't think I have more than 2 or 3. And so on and so forth down the line. I mean, he wrote a lot, and I don't have a lot of it. And that's a terrible shame. And that's on me, because it's as easy as going to Project Gutenberg and downloading it. They're perfectly nice, neat, curated copies of everything that he wrote for free on Project Gutenberg and sites like it. I just haven't done it. But I love reading about this author, and I love reading this author. So I wanted to recommend Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It will take you one long afternoon to read, and you will love it. But I could say that about anything this author wrote. He has a famously uncompleted novel. You'll love it. My own favorite of his novels, The Black Arrow, you will love. Get into the swing, the vein of his lingo, of how he actually has his characters talk, and there'll be no going back. I've never known anyone who grew out of Robert Louis Stevenson, which is a kind of a semi-ironic comment to make about an author who's often dismissed as a writer of boys' books, and who used to semi-ironically, tongue-in-cheek, dismiss himself that way. I'm not going to rant about his marriage. I'm not going to rant about his health. Well known to be suffering from tuberculosis. Well known to have the galloping consumption that made him a wraith while he was still alive. And yet there wasn't a single person who visited him in person From famous friends all the way to the obscure, there wasn't a single person who ever went to make the trek to visit him in person who didn't come away with the exact same reaction. The same reaction that they had about F. Scott Fitzgerald. When people would walk away from Fitzgerald after knowing him in the newspaper and magazine reports about his high life, they would invariably say, well, yeah, he has a cocktail tray right there, but it's the smoking that's going to kill him. He never stops. People said the exact same thing about Stevenson, the exact same thing. That, yeah, he's famously consumptive, but that's not what's going to kill him. And I'm not going to rant about that at all. Instead, I'm going to sing the praises of this author. I thought about ending our little Victober tribute with something from Kipling. I'm sure that, other than the Jungle Books, I'm sure that we've already done the Jungle Books here, and I love them, and I can quote them from memory. But I'm sure I have at least something else. The Man Who Would Be King and Other Stories, or Captain's Courageous, something like, or Kim. I must have something else in Penguin Classics by Rudyard Kipling, and I was going to look, because in a way he is the quintessential caricature of a Victorian author, good and bad. But instead I went with Stevenson, because he's just my guy. So I'm going to recommend Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for you today. If you haven't read it, if you only heard about it, give it a try. There's a lot more going on in it than the renditions you have probably heard have led you to believe. And move on from there to all of the standard name recognition novels that he wrote that you may not have read. Give them a try. You will like them. But anyway, that's your Penguin for today. We're going to move straight on from Victober to Nonfiction November. So your next Penguin will be a nonfiction volume. What will it be? We shall see. I think I have 30 of them left. But either way, I'm going to wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.